Since the task of creating transparency is often a long process when we manually keyframe masks, we can look to automated means to help us speed up our workflow in After Effects. In this shot, I have a robot who's revealing his true nature, and this is comprised of several different elements. Let's go ahead and take a look at how this was built. So from the ground up, I have the inside portion of this robot's head. On top of that, I have a face. On top of that, I have this original plate of the actor and his face, and it's actually cut out. There's transparency here that reveals the robot face. So it's this that we're going to be tackling. But you'll see that as we put this on top of our robot face, we have 3D layer. This is a Cinema 4D layer that is essentially just the face itself being pulled off. On top of that, we have 2 layers for the hands, the index finger and the thumb there. So altogether, it creates this illusion that we have a robot peeling off his face to reveal his insides. Let's take a look at layer 6. This is the host face layer. Let's double click on that to step inside that pre-comp. And you'll see that this is the original background plate for this actor. And if we zoom in, you'll notice there is a little subtle motion of the actor and his head is moving just ever so slightly. If we were to take this and put our robot face right on top of it as a still, your eye would easily pick up on that discrepancy of movement. A still robot picture on top of ever so slightly moving face, that would really stick out like a sore thumb. So in order to get this moving along with it, we're going to need to create a mask that tracks along with this actor's face. Let's go ahead and switch over to the start version of this file. We'll not save those changes, and instead we'll target the exercise files, and under O1 transparency folder, you'll find O103 tracking mask in motion start. So this is essentially the exact same file as what we just saw, except this time the only difference is this host face has no transparency just yet. So we'll create transparency here by way of the pen tool. We'll switch over to that and make sure that Roto Bezier is turned on in this case. And what that'll allow us is to create rounded corners here as we tap and introduce new points for our mask. You'll see that the rounded edges come into play automatically. So I'm just going to create somewhat of a symmetrical mask here, point on top, up to point on bottom, and some rounded points on his face right here on his cheeks, and again up top here on towards the temples of his head. Somewhere in there is pretty good. Let's go ahead and twirl down layer 6, and with that new mask selected, let's go ahead and right click on that, and you'll see that track mask is an option for us. It's going to open up this tracker panel. And this is going to tell After Effects to track this mask according to the footage underneath it by all these different methods. So depending on your shot and what you want to isolate, you could focus in on just position, scale, and rotation. Obviously, since we're dealing with faces here, let's go down to face tracking outline only. You'll see that I don't have any keyframes for this mask path just yet, but let's go ahead and expand this out and rewind to the very beginning of our shot. And when we analyze forward, After Effects is going to create keyframes for us. And it's going to take all the subtleties of this actor's face and his movements and track the mask according to that. So now when we scrub through really fast, you'll see that there is motion there, and After Effects has done a pretty good job of tracking the mask according to this guy's face. Now, by default, it adds and keeps in the face. We want to actually subtract his face, so let's go ahead and switch this up. And now that we have that transparency, let's go ahead and reveal the robot face underneath. Let's go ahead and turn off all this soloing and see this kind of in context. While the motion's there, it's just a little too cut and pasty for me. Let's go ahead and zoom in here, and you'll see that these edges are really, really sharp. So layer 6 will come down to mask feather and introduce a bit of feathering to that. And to really help sell this shot, let's introduce a bit of edging here to suggest that there's some thickness to the robot's external features. So to do that, I'm going to select layer 6 and duplicate it, and I'm going to call this host face edge. Let's bring this down underneath the host face, and I'm going to solo this. And what I'll do now is under the masks, there is an option here for mask expansion. And this allows us to either expand or shrink our current mask. And so what I want to do is just shrink it just a little bit to create this inside lip to suggest that depth. So now when we see it in context, you'll see that there's not much of a difference. Although if I toggle on layer 7 on and off, you see that we are introducing a bit more of a layer of his original face. So to help sell this, let's go ahead and move over to our effects and presets. And I'm going to look for an effect called levels. And under color correction, you'll find it here. Let's click and drag that to layer 7 here, the host face edge layer. And now what I want to do is just alter these values a little bit so that we get it to be a little bit darker. Let's go ahead and turn off the mask so we can see this in context. A little bit darker and maybe just a little bit more red. So let's switch over to the red channel and take our red gamma and push it up a little bit. There we go. Darken it just a little bit more and maybe alter the feathering just a tad. Okay, so there is the inside. We're kind of suggesting that there's a bit of a lip there. And so there's a before, there's an after, and now as we preview this all the way through, now we're getting this effect that this robot face is sitting right on top of that actor and following his subtle movements there. So here we saw that to track features that have simple shapes, we can use track masks to have After Effects do some of the heavy lifting for us.